You ever had one of those moments when you walk out of Walmart or Target or wherever you shop and you find yourself walking through the parking lot looking for your car because you have no idea where you parked? Daily. We had the brilliant idea of buying a silver minivan, which if you've ever walked around a Walmart parking lot, every other car is a silver minivan. And so very often I walk out with my bag and you keep walking because you don't want anybody to know that you're looking for your car. So you walk up this aisle and then kind of cut across this way, and surely there's got to be somebody watching, look at this guy looking for his car. And that's that brilliant moment of forgetting where you park. So we had this idea of buying these Disney foam antenna toppers. And so we put it on the top of our antenna. So at the bare minimum, you can kind of scan all the other silver minivans and see the one with the little Disney antenna topper on it. It's kind of ironic we chose a Disney antenna topper because Disney was not always a good experience for me and for my wife. See, many, many years ago, I think I told you last week that my wife and I have been married for 21 years, 21 awesome years. And about 2 years into our marriage, we were sitting there one evening on the couch, and on the TV comes this commercial for this great Florida vacation package for about $300. And if we were one of the first few callers, we could get in on this deal. Otherwise, the deal was going to be shut down if we didn't grab the phone and call right now. So I looked at my wife, she looks at me, and we're like, we got to do this. This is great, $300 a week in Florida, 5 days in Florida. This is going to be great. So we grabbed the phone, and sure enough, we were one of the first few people to get on this great deal. So we started planning and preparing. We chose a date, and a few months down the road, here comes our great Florida vacation. So we got in the car, we drove down to Orlando. We're so excited. Followed the directions to this resort we were going to be staying at. We pull up, and I look at the place and say, we must have got the wrong directions. This surely can't be the place it's not the place we saw on TV, of course, but so I go in to just check with the guy, walk to the front desk, and sure enough, they had our name. And I looked around the place and thought, man, this place is kind of a dive. It's sort of dumpy, and well, maybe the room will be a little bit better. So we grabbed our bags, we go up to the room, open the door, and oh no. There were stains on the floor, there were stains on the wall. The bathroom was disgusting. And we walked around this place, and we're just like, hearts sank to the ground. Here's this great Florida 5-day getaway that we were planning, and this place is a dump. So being, 2 years into marriage, I'm going to be the hero. So I get on the phone, I'm going to call these people and set this right, and ring, 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 you get voicemail. Endless voicemail. Push this button, push that button. Tried and tried and tried for hours, tried the rest of that day, couldn't get in touch with anybody. The next day, I'm like furious, I'm going to fix this thing, and couldn't get a hold of anybody. So we decided, okay, well, we're here to stay. Let's just make the best of it. So maybe about the second day into the vacation, we're walking along somewhere in Orlando, and we see the sign for free Disney tickets. And we're like, this is going to be great. We can finally do something good with this vacation. It'll turn out so much better now. We're going to get some free Disney tickets. So we walk in and ask them. They said, no, we're just going to show you around our place, and then we'll have this little we'll just have a little meeting at the end, and then you don't have to buy anything, but you can get your free Disney tickets. We're like, piece of cake. This is going to be great. So they show us around this resort, and this is the place I had in mind when we were planning this vacation. It was gorgeous. There were several swimming pools. All the rooms were just fit out perfectly. I mean, everything was just awesome. We loved this place, and they're walking around and they're smiling at us, and yeah, wouldn't this be nice? Wouldn't this be nice? We're like, sure. So then at the end, they take you into this nice, tiny little room, and you sit down with this smiling salesperson. And they sit across the table for you, and they look you in the eye and say, yeah, you really liked that, didn't you? That was nice. Well, this could be yours for just, this much per year, which only breaks down to this much per month. And as soon as he said that, I'm like, elbow Julie because we're like, there's no way we can afford this. This is crazy. And the guy went on for a little bit longer and found like, there's just no way there's no way we can afford that. So, we're thinking we get to get out of there now. Oh, but no. Let me work the numbers a little bit. Let me just see. And so he takes a pencil out and he works numbers. He goes, well, really, we could do this right here. I think, would that fit into your budget a little better? And I'm still like laughing on the inside. There's no way we can afford this place. And I tell him that. But then he goes off to find the manager. The manager's going to fix this, right? He'll get it all straightened out. Came back in. The manager now sits down and says, well, look it. We've showed you around this wonderful place. This could be yours. And he shows us some other numbers. And by that point, I am just like beads of sweat. I'm stressed out. They're like, we've been in there for, it seemed like an hour dealing with these people. I just want my Disney tickets. And we were so stressed out and pressured. I couldn't even think straight. Finally, we're just like, no, I can't do it. I think they finally realized that they're not going to get any further with us. So they gave us our Disney tickets. We took the tickets. But by the time we walked out of there, I didn't even care about Disney. I just wanted to go home. So we went to Disney, and I'm sure we had a good time. I honestly don't even remember much about the trip after that point. For some, they've had a similar kind of experience like that, but with church. You've heard great things about it. You've heard that, hey, this could be really awesome. Maybe even started in with these preconceived expectations of what it would be about. But you never really experience it. You found that maybe you've been sold a bill of goods. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. So if you've ever felt like that in your life, or maybe secretly you feel like that right now, then this message is for you. Let's dive in and think this through. But before we do that, would you guys pray with me? Father, we thank you so much, again, for who you are. We thank you for your love. We thank you for your Son. We thank you for church and what you've given us. Help us to understand that in a better way this morning. Encourage us and strengthen us, and we will give you all the glory and the thanks for it. In Jesus' name, amen. So what is church? In the grand scheme of things, how would you explain church to somebody who really has no knowledge of Christianity at all? There's lots of organizations out there that do a lot of good. They get people together in community, and they do good things like a Rotary Club or a Lions Club or maybe a neighborhood watch or a nonprofit, an HOA, a civic organization. There's all sorts of organizations out there where people get together and do some good things together. So what difference is there between the church and these other organizations? I believe one of the key ingredients that the church has is something that's found right at the core of the very description and the beginnings of the church. So I'm going to start in a place in Scripture this morning, a place that you may be familiar with. Matter of fact, in a message on the Atypical Church just a couple months ago, you heard Paul talk about this passage and what it means. Let's start in that place this morning. But today I want you to know I'm working towards a place in Scripture that I think is going to help shed a helpful light on the purpose and the meaning of why we get together, why we meet together, especially in the form of connect groups, which is something our church does together. But first, let's get some perspective on this. And it's a passage, again, that's somewhat familiar. Now, shortly after Jesus came back from the grave, he was seen by many people, and then he heads back up to heaven. The church starts to grow and starts to take shape. And we see this description in Acts chapter 2, starting at verse 42. It says this, and it's talking about the new believers, says, and they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as they had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. Now, this word fellowship starts to appear throughout the New Testament. It starts to appear over and over in the way the early church was described. Fellowship, this word meaning like a partnership or fellow participants with a bond of love for one another, with a common goal. The fellowship was a clear pillar of this New Testament church. It was an indispensable element in their effectiveness, in their outreach, in taking the message to the world. The church would have likely never gotten off the ground without this bond of fellowship and sense of community that God himself had placed within them. As we're going to examine together, the same thing applies to church today. I think there's no true church without fellowship. Now, sometimes we hear the word fellowship and we think, yeah, that sounds nice, but I'm full of relationships already. I have work. I have school meetings. I'm around people all the time. I travel for business. When I get home, I want some peace and quiet. Not more fellowship. I want some time to myself. Now, gone are the days when people would wait on their front porches watching their neighbors stroll up and down the streets. And maybe when a conversation would naturally break out between somebody walking down the sidewalk and there'd be a fresh pie sitting in the window waiting for them. I don't know what I just did, but how about, I don't know if one of you guys up there can hit play on one of those slides. You got to go back up to the top. If not, try that one. Sorry about that. So those days of old when they'd wait for someone to walk by and grab a fresh pie and some sweet tea and sit on the front porch and chat with their neighbors. Now we come home, we're overworked, we're exhausted, we're tired. We close the blinds and turn on the TV and grab some dinner with those in the family who are now already out doing something else that evening, aren't already out with other things on their schedule. Now, to be honest, I hate a knock at the door in the evening as well. And I'm sure I'm not the only one in the room who's done this before. The doorbell rings or somebody knocks on the door and you're like, all right, who's there? So you try to go to a side window, peek through the blinds. Do I know this person? Who is this? Is it the Jehovah's Witnesses? Is it a salesperson? And I can't be the only one who doesn't like a knock on the door in the evenings. We're wired for connections, though. Right from the beginning of creation, man was wired to be connected. Real, meaningful, challenging connections. But we often fill those voids with cheap imitations. Now, I'm not about to tell you that we need to return to this way of life back in the days of old and keep a pie sitting in our window. Although it would do us some good to reconsider our busy schedule sometimes. Instead, this is a message that is going to re-examine what biblical fellowship and community are all about. But how could something as seemingly trivial as fellowship be such an indispensable element to the church? I think the key is this. Connecting in biblical community is the key to building strength, energy, and focus for the mission. I'm not getting anywhere with the clicker today. But just listen to what I'm saying here. Listen to these words. Connecting in biblical community is the key to building strength, energy, and focus for the mission. Let's think about this for a minute. There's something about this connection that makes it distinctly different from any other connection. And it's found in where that connection begins. Our connection begins at the cross. Jesus hung on a cross 2,000 years ago. And that's where the connection began. But it wasn't for something that he had done wrong. It's because we are the ones who put him there. The things that I've done wrong and the things that you have done wrong are the things that put Jesus on the cross. And that sin separates us from God. And we can't work it off. We can't be good enough to make that go away. We can't try to please God enough to say, okay, he'll forget the bad things. We have earned a penalty for those sins. But God made a way through his son, Jesus. And although he was God's own son, he was sent to this world to restore that broken connection between man and God. His death, his blood paid the penalty for all who are willing to turn from their sin and turn to him for forgiveness. This is salvation. This is life. That's restoring the broken connection between man and God. So when we gather together as those who've trusted in Jesus, it doesn't mean that we're better than anyone else. It doesn't mean that we're better than anyone you see on the news or any of the rest of the world. We're not better than any of them. We're just simply forgiven and saved. But that's also reason, church, for us to figure out how to tell the whole world, how that they can hear the same good news that we've received. That's the mission that we're called to. 1 John 1:7 says, "But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his son, cleanses us from all sin." So our connection to God through Jesus is the first and most important connection. And because of that connection, we have connection with each other. It brings us back to this idea of fellowship. The church isn't perfect. It wasn't back then, and it isn't today. But that's the beauty of what God does, isn't it? He takes people like you and me who are not perfect, who've made mistakes, we're broken, we've failed in different ways. And he brings us together in a way that only he can to accomplish his mission, to build his kingdom. That's what you'll likely find in a connect group. Imperfect and assorted people from all walks of life learning how to follow Jesus together. So what is a connect group? I keep mentioning these things. There's groups that meet throughout the week from this church. If you walk out these doors after church and turn right to your left, you'll see a map with these different groups that meet. And it's a time and a place where we meet together to figure out what that means. Matter of fact, think of this definition. A connect group is discipleship through community. Discipleship meaning learning how to follow Jesus. Community meaning in fellowship with other believers. It's simple. Discipleship through community. Connect groups are what we feel as a church is the best modern day adaptation of what the new believers did in the early church. But in our culture, in our setting, especially as it relates to community and fellowship. We're learning how to follow Jesus in fellowship with other believers. But let me clarify something. Connect groups aren't a place where you go and hide away from the world. It's not a place where you have an exclusive social club with your friends. But rather it's a place where together you're prepared and you're equipped for the mission that Jesus called us to. It's this thing that makes the world stop and take notice. There's something supernaturally different about these people. Jesus himself said that our love for each other is going to show the world that we're his disciples. There's something different about what should happen between you and I as we meet together. So again, connecting in biblical community is the key to building strength, energy, and focus for the mission. I wish I could have bottled up a discussion that occurred this last week. This past Thursday, I met with all the Connect group hosts. And if you could have heard the discussion there, it would amaze you to hear these leaders of the groups talking about how the group has impacted them, how it's impacted the group. You heard things like, hey, they were right there by my side when my son was in the hospital. They were the first ones to rush to my side. You've heard them say, they're like extended family to me. You heard someone say, they made me feel at home when I moved into the area. Together we've grown spiritually. The cool thing was that here's people from all different walks of life, all different places around the country, talking passionately about their own groups, the people that they'd start to form these relationships with. There's many differences among them, but there was a common denominator. Now, when Tolkien wrote the epic tale Lord of the Rings, he wisely used the word fellowship. He was describing this group of people who would be sent out together on this important quest. And here you have a group of people with many clear differences among them. They had different pasts, they had different skills. They didn't look like each other, and for the most part, some of them didn't even like each other. But they were united around a mission that was far greater than themselves or any. So, that's just a story. But it gives us a window into what the church could be or should be. What is biblical fellowship? What is biblical community? It's not a potluck supper after church, although we enjoyed that last week. It's not a Super Bowl party. It's not an accountability group or a friendship circle or a common love for pizza or fried chicken. It's a band of brothers and sisters. I came across a quote this week that describes this well, saying it's an all-in, life or death collective venture in the face of great evil and overwhelming opposition. True fellowship is less like friends gathered to watch the Super Bowl and more like the players in the field, blood, sweat, and tears, huddled in the backfield in preparation for the next down. So here we are at Quest, a businessman, an auto mechanic, an office worker, a salesperson, a techie, a baby boomer, a hipster, a Gen Xer, and more. And in some cases, the only common denominator is a common love for Jesus and the mission that he called us to. Now, in the world's eyes, there might not be much that would draw Jesus' followers together. And yet, we're able to live with those strong bonds of fellowship and community. It's because we're united together in this common mission, this common purpose. We need each other to keep going on this mission. We need each other to say, hey man, I need some help. Keep me focused on this mission. Don't let me slow down. Help me through this. Help me figure this out. You need each other to keep from being distracted or becoming lazy or uncommitted, to pick each other up when we're wounded. Now, from personal experience, in the small groups I've been involved with throughout my life, there's nights when I don't even want to go. I'm tired. I got so much else going on. But it seems like it's those nights that I least want to go when I show up and God does the greatest things in my life or in my wife's life or in my family. So here's what I want you to see. Here's the heart of this message. It's just a couple of verses that describe why we should regularly meet together in community. And maybe it's the first time you'll see these verses, or maybe you've seen these before through your life, but I want you to look at them maybe with some fresh eyes this morning. It's Hebrews 10, verses 24 and 25. It says this, and let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Now, these verses are often used as a weapon against those who skip church. It's like a club or a dagger you could pull out to stab someone in the back. Did you hear that so-and-so is neglecting to meet at church? They were at the beach 2 weekends in a row. That sometimes these verses get pushed to the side as that. We're supposed to not neglect meeting together, and that's where we're at. And although that's an important part in these verses, really that's kind of a side note to what is being said here. The main subject is pointing out why we should meet together regularly. It's to build each other up, to motivate, to encourage each other, to dust each other off, to give each other a refreshing drink of water, to point each other to truth, to keep us focused, to learn together, to serve together, to reach the world. More often than not, it's to look past our own nose at the needs of others. You're needed. Now, being spiritually connected with others is an investment it brings greater value to your life, but it also brings greater value to those that you're around. Your being involved in that group helps to bring value to everyone else in the group. It's not just, what can I get out of this thing? But it's, how can I join arm in arm with others to keep going? How can I build each other up? Following Jesus, frankly, can sometimes be tiring. It can be exhausting. It can be frustrating. We talked about that at the beginning. Sometimes we just end up frustrated with church. Following Jesus can sometimes be frustrating or tiring. It can become easy to drift into just mundane. It can become easy to put a pile of other priorities in front of following Jesus. For some, it can become easy just to throw in the towel and to walk away. Again, connecting and biblical community is the key to building strength and energy and focus for the mission. But church, for the most part, the world's not getting closer to Jesus. Many are wandering around lost and they don't even know it. So many who are aimlessly searching and they don't know that their deepest need is Jesus. Kind of like wandering around in a parking lot looking for your car. Which again is why we put the Disney symbol on the top of our antenna. Now, why would I want that on top of my car? After all, Julie and I had a horrible experience down there. But gladly, that wasn't our only experience at Disney. There were some people that we knew at a church one time that we kind of were acquainted with. We didn't know them well. And one day they approached us and asked if we would like to use some of their vacation time at a place they had down in Florida. We thought, okay, this sounds good. I think we can get into this. They were offering it to us. We thought, okay, good. So Julie and I talked about it a little bit. We had our 3 kids at that point. And we said, okay, let's go ahead and do this. So we called them up and they told us a little bit about the place. And as in that conversation, they said, so you'll have kind of your own little area, but then we'll have our area. And I was like, oh no. They're going with us? But at that point, we were already committed. We're like, oh, what are we going to do? So we talked about, like, okay, well, we don't know them that well, but maybe it won't be so bad. And then a week or so later, they say, well, our son is going to be down there as well, and he's going to meet up with us. And again, I'm like, oh, this whole vacation's come crashing down again. I'm going to ban Florida from my vocabulary. But as the weeks went on and we were preparing to go on this trip, they talked about it more and more, and we just kind of got used to the idea, okay, we're going to go down there. And so we drove down there, and we pull into this place. It was gorgeous. I mean, these multi-story buildings, pools all over, sort of similar to that place that Julie and I dragged ourselves through many, many years before. And we were enjoying it down there. They said, hey, we're going to take you guys to Disney. We're like, really, all 5 of us? And they're like, yep, we're going to take you to Disney. And my son, this is them telling me this, they said, well, our son had worked at Disney for a couple of summers as an intern, and he knows the place really well, and he'll be able to show us around. We're like, oh, okay. So we get there, and their son meets us in the parking lot, and he's already got like his map out and some tickets and everything else, and we get in the park. He says, okay, you guys are going to go wait in this line. I'm going to go grab some fast passes for over here. We're like, okay, so we go through the line. We come out of the ride, and he hands us some fast passes for the next one and said, okay, we got 10 minutes to make it there. Let's head there. And we started going through Disney. With his experience, he had been there. He knew exactly where to go, where to be, what time to show up for which shows and which ride, which fast passes to get, so that not a minute was wasted. We saw more of Disney in one day than most people see in 3, because we were there with people that we didn't know that well, but started to take an interest in us, and we took an interest in them. And their son showed us things that we were never able to see on our own. We had the best day, the best time, the best vacation we could ever imagine. Now, I realize that a trip to Disney isn't maybe the best analogy when it comes to describing small groups. But a good small group can be similar to that. It may not be exactly what you're planning for, but in the end, it can be more meaningful and fulfilling than you have ever imagined, living in community with other followers of Jesus. So I have a few questions for you this morning to consider. First of all, are you connected with God through Jesus? This is the most important connection you'd ever have in your life. Everything else falls far, far after that. Because with that one connection is where life begins, where forgiveness of sin begins. If that's you this morning, if you know that you need to place your trust in Jesus, then in a minute there's going to be a song. You can meet one of the elders over at the cross and just talk that through with them. But how about this? Question number 2. Are you resisting being spiritually connected with others? Are you in a connect group? If not, what's holding you back? Is it busyness? Is it maybe fear? Is it other priorities? Maybe it just doesn't seem relevant to you. Maybe you've given it a sincere effort in the past, but after some time, if truth be told, you felt unfulfilled or bored, maybe even frustrated. So if you're still unconvinced that maybe you should be connected in community, or if you've been unwilling to intentionally move things out of your schedule in order to make that a priority in your life, then I'm asking you simply to maybe give it a try. Over the next couple weeks, you're going to hear more about what exactly this is and what it means. But I'm not talking about a dip your toe in the water kind of try. I mean a real investment. Prayerfully ask God where he would have you plug in. Ask God to show you things that maybe you've never seen before. Ask him to grow your heart, your life, your marriage, your family. And see God do only what he can do through it. But maybe a third question. Maybe you're saying, hey, I'm already bought in. Maybe you're like one of the Connect Group host leaders the other day. You said, I love my Connect Group. I'm so glad I'm a part of it. Let me ask you this. What are some ways you can increasingly pour into others? If you've experienced the personal benefit of being plugged into a Connect Group, then consider, how can I invest in others in my group? Over the next couple weeks, we're going to continue to look at what does it mean to follow Jesus. What is this mission he's called us to? I'm going to ask you to come back next week and the week after and maybe bring somebody with you. We're on a mission together. What an important mission it is. Would you guys pray with me?